Now it's Monday, January 6th, 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. But I've been in the process of replacing the original machine heads on this thing. So the replacement set I got are these Kluson Revolution tuning machines with an upgraded 20:1 gear ratio. So overall these are pretty similar to the Grover Rotomatics I'm familiar with. But I just prefer these kidney bean style buttons with the set screw so I can tighten them up a little more. So these are just traditional tuners, not locking ones. I don't really care for locking tuners much. And I'm still waiting on the pickups to arrive because we have some inclement weather here and things are kind of delayed. And I'm also waiting on some other parts from TV Jones. I've received some parts already, so I've got this clear tubing to put over the pots and the toggle switch to fish this in and out through the cavities and the corresponding holes. And got a Switchcraft switch that actually fits. Got some orange drop caps, so I want to try to do a treble bleed mod on the master volume. I've got my CTS 500K solid shaft pots, some new knobs, and I've also got these adapters from TV Jones to use the original Gretsch EM5 style rings. It's cheaper to get these adapters than to buy a whole new set of pickup surrounds. And then over the weekend I received this B6 tailpiece. I think should be a little higher quality than the B60 or whatever it comes with. I did some other work off camera because the screw holes for this don't line up perfectly. But anyhow, I'll have to figure out how to mount this because the bottom of this isn't supposed to be flush against the body. And the old one's got a little bit of a step on here that rests against the body. But this one's completely flat, so I'm gonna have to figure out the proper height or clearance for this to float above the body. Of course, it's still got those original pins in here. I don't know if there are any factory tailpieces with the string through design. I know Callahan makes a replacement roller that just has holes drilled through here so you can use it as a string through design, but I imagine those might be expensive, so I'll just probably still use this as it is. As for the bridge, I'm thinking I might like to replace it with a Compton, and then I would like to take a nail file and just clean up some of the rough splintery wood in here because that could be dangerous, and we'll go from there. But as I was about to say earlier, off camera I got some little skewer sticks and just plugged these holes because the new B6 tailpiece isn't going to align with these old holes, I don't think. Now it's Wednesday, January 8th. We finally got our pickups. So these are the original TV Jones classic pickups, the neck and bridge set. Made in America, all the hardware that goes into these. So the one thing I need to do is actually swap these rings over to the Gretsch ones, because the previous owner had these on, I think, a 335, so these are probably the Gibson rings. And I also got lucky with these being a used set because they're English mount, which means they have the legs. On some of these, they're universal mount where they just have the holes here, and then if you want to put them in the Gretsch rings, you might also have to get some brackets. I lucked out that I found a used set of English mount ones. So I grabbed just a cheap little nail file from Bay. I just want to clean up the rough cuts in here, because I really don't want to be getting splinters while I'm trying to work on this thing. Alright, so next I just need to swap these rings over to the Gretsch ones. Now I'm still waiting on the TV Jones order with those pickup risers. which I feel like I might need just to get the proper height adjustment out of them. Then I got a replacement set of these buttons so I could have the little pin bushing that goes in the bottom, since I kind of trashed the other one, taking the tailpiece out. So now we've got our Switchcraft switch, and we've got to grab these 4 pots, and I got a Switchcraft output jack, 1/4 inch, and 2 of these capacitors, 1 tone cap, 1 for the treble bleed, and I'm also still waiting on a resistor for the treble bleed mod. But standard, I think, seems to be 150k ohm resistor, and I think it's a 0.01 or 0.001 microfarad cap. Okay, so these are the original FT5E pickups. I just want to swap the rings over. Now, from the factory, these don't come with pickup risers, but you can see just how high the pickups are, so the risers kind of alleviate such a high adjustment like that. Now we got our TV Jones pickups and our stock rings. So the 2 screw holes go on the left, the single one goes on the right. Got our neck and bridge pickups here. Just make sure I don't have any random straight screws stuck to the back when this goes into the guitar. And here's the TV Jones adapter kit. It's a dual screw mount adapter, and they even include the height adjustment screw, or at least 1 screw. So you need 2 of these, which I have here. And I don't know if the screw holes are the same sizes, so I guess it's nice that they at least include these. And then hopefully these screw holes will fit the Gretsch screws. And there's also installation instructions. Okay, so once it's installed, it should look like this, which means the longer screw and the spring they included must be for this side. Alright, I got a bunch of different springs upon taking all this apart, so I don't know which ones I'm going to use. Some of these ones are pretty stiff, and I don't know how easy they'll be to compress if I have to bring the height all the way up or almost all the way up. I think it makes the most sense to put these shortest Gretsch springs on the side with the 2 screws, because even with those other springs I was trying to compress them and it was almost about to warp this plastic. Now I'm just trying to measure the DC output resistance on these. The neck pickup wires are really burnt, so I don't know if I can even get my meter probes on these without restripping this first. Probably need to just go do that. But the bridge pickup we can measure here. So the braided and the black leads go to ground, and the white should be the hot. So the bridge, we're getting 4.7k ohms. The neck would barely get a reading of 3.86k. So they're pretty closely matched, only 1k apart. I'm definitely going to have to restrip this white lead right here. That's not quite going to work. Alright, so now I'm taking another look at the original wiring harness I pulled out. Now, I need to match this or replicate this as closely as possible in order to get the correct lengths of wire. So each of these main wires is actually a 2-conductor. There's basically a hot wire, and then the shielding around the outside goes to all the ground connections, which means you have to run a ground wire to every single component. So as you see, every single pot has a ground wire attached, and of course the jack and the switch are also connected to ground, so this is all grounded together. Now on these original FT5E pickups, the blue wire is for the bridge pickup, and the red wire goes to the neck. Alright, so I got all the heat shrink cut off of here so it's easier to trace all these wires out. But again, the red wires correspond with the original neck pickup, blue wires correspond with the bridge pickup. The volume pots are all wired the same way as far as the 3 lugs. So looking at the pots from their back side with the lugs facing away from you, it's 1, 2, 3. So the number 1 lug is always connected to ground. The number 2 center lug is where you solder the hot output lead from your pickup. Number 3 lug is the hot output from your switch terminals for each position. So this red lead goes to your neck position, and then the blue is for the bridge pickup. So you got number 1 to ground, 2 from your pickup, 3 from the switch here. Now this yellow lead is for the main output or the common lug on the switch. So your switch common or the output from any of these positions on the switch goes through the yellow lead, connects to the number 3 lug on your master volume. Then the number 2 lug in the middle goes through this gray lead, and that connects to your master tone. And that's going to the number 2 lug along with the connection to your output jack. Those are both connected to this middle lug. The number 3 lug is unpopulated. There's nothing connected there. The number 1 lug on your master tone just goes to one lead of your tone cap. Then of course the other lead of your tone cap just goes to ground. Then you have the hot and the ground on your output jack. So again, the hot on your output jack goes to the number 2 lug on the master tone since it's closest physically to the master tone, which then connects all the way to your master volume. So those are all connected together. And your ground from the output jack obviously connects to ground on the back of this master tone pot. So that's how I'm going to have to match up all the wiring when I go in with the new higher quality stuff. I don't know exactly how much of the soldering stuff I'm going to film because my workbench is right next to the furnace down here, and it's just kicking on and off constantly since it's winter. And I've also got my fume extractor here because I use leaded solder. So I'm going to have this running the whole time I'm doing any soldering. But anyway, I'm going to just try to match up all the lengths of wire here and then kind of just go from there step by step. Ladies and gentlemen, another mistake. I got a little ahead of myself and there's something else I forgot to do. I need to enlarge these holes for the CTS pots. Forgot to do that. Right, I just ream these out by hand with my reamer. So these need to be 3/8. Oh, this is crazy, but I just noticed a slight sign of damage on this. Right there, the wood's kind of split on this bridge base. I don't know if that happened in shipping or what. That's not too good though. Alright, it's the next day. I've just been trying to initially test everything. So the pickups are producing output, but unfortunately I've got some really poor ground connections, particularly from the pickups themselves. So I'm going to have to tear this apart and take a look at the black and braided bare wire for each of the pickups. Because keep in mind I bought these used, so I think maybe the strands of wire got damaged if somebody didn't have proper wire strippers, or even when they were taking these out of another guitar, they could have melted the wire insulation, and there's insulation in the solder joint that makes the connection really bad. So that can happen when you buy used pickups, but that definitely needs to be addressed. It's some time later. I've been taking this apart a few times to try to chase down the ground issues, and I think the hum might be just marginally better, but again, that could just be my wishful thinking. So anyway, I'm going to try and fit this Bigsby tailpiece now. I've just got a junk set of strings I don't mind sacrificing, just to try to get the alignment somewhere in the ballpark. So I've got the strings wound, well, just the low E and high E kind of wound around the tuning posts just to keep some tension on there. Then I've pre-bent the ball ends of these so they won't pop off of the pins, and then I've got to just align the nut slots and the bridge saddles here to get some rough idea of how to center this. But yeah, this all has to be in line, and then you also don't want the strings falling off the edge of the fingerboard. And the alignment with the pole pieces. Curiously enough, TV Jones actually spaces these different, which is cool. So the neck pickup actually has narrower spacing from what I've read than the bridge pickup. But anyhow, it's a work in progress to say the least, because although any hum is unsatisfying, this just goes beyond what you and I would consider normal unsatisfying. So I'm going to put all these parts in here so they don't get lost. And we're going to have to reevaluate. Well, unfortunately, I'm having to attempt this again. There's just no two ways about it. And I had way too much footage to really edit efficiently. So I'm going at this again. Trying to use some of the braided cable this time to hopefully quiet things down because it's shielded. And I don't want to have a bunch of junk solder on my ground connections. So this time I've got each switch position here. This yellow pushback wire is going to the ground, and then I've just soldered it to the outer braid of this wire to hopefully keep it more cleanly grounded instead of having all these globs of solder everywhere, which is always a problem with grounding. But it's definitely more difficult with the hollow bodies because you don't just have a control plate to ground all the hardware to like you do on a telly. Like everything's got continuity from this control plate, and it's totally different with the hollow body. This is just bare wood, so you literally have to run ground wires to ground everything together, and it's a lot. And then similarly, I'm redoing the pots. So I've just got the ground with a wire going through lug number 1, and then passing through that and just grounding to the back of the pot with just a little bit of solder, because this really needs to be a lot cleaner if there's any chance of cutting down on all the noise. And then again, I've got these little ground wires grounded to the shielding on the outside. Alright, we're back again. Now I've got all new pots and just rewired this to get all these ground solder joints much cleaner. Made use of the same caps and the jack and switch and all that. But if there's any cold solder joint, it's oxidized, and that affects the connection and messes with all the resistance and stuff, so that could explain some of the noise. But anyway, I've also thoroughly tested this with my multimeter to make sure everything checks out and is grounded together, and that we get darn close to 0 ohms with all the connections. And I've grounded the braided shielded part of the wiring together with some of these ground wires here too, so the braid is properly grounded the whole way through. So next I want to just put some of this back together. Like at least get the switch and the master volume and master tone and the jack in there, and then I'll just leave out the volume pots for the time being until the pickups go in, because the hot output lead of each pickup needs to solder to the center lug on each of the volume pots, and then the ground wires on the backs of the pots. And I've already soldered the hardware bridge ground here, so that's done. And then from there we should just plug it in and make sure the hum is improved, or hopefully gone this time. So this tubing stuff from TV Jones is really essential. I don't see any easy way of doing this without this stuff. And this little chopstick thing is for the jack to go in. This part's tricky, but still doable. This is important to just get your hands on one of these sets from TV Jones. And then there's also one of the tubes with a small diameter for your selector switch. So that goes on this threaded shaft here. You have to take off the tip and then just put this on, and you can get that through this hole here. And then it has to come out through one of the pickup cavities. So basically all the electronics need to first go in through one of the pickup cavities and then out through the appropriate holes for these knobs in your jack and your toggle switch. I'm going to start with the switch first. So what you would do is put this through the component hole and then try to just pull it through this bridge cavity route here. I need two hands to do this, but it'll come up through here, and then you would take this end and put it on your switch, and then pull this end until it comes up through the body. Well, I had to take this thing apart again. I'm missing a ground connection. Made a mistake, so I need to run a ground wire to the master tone pot. Since that's not one of the volume pots, or the only pot in here that's not a volume pot, none of its lugs are connected to ground. And the pot itself isn't actually grounded, so I need to run a ground wire from the back of this pot to my braided shielding on somewhere on here, just to make sure this is grounded. And then my hardware ground from the trem is soldered to the back of this pot too, so my hardware also wasn't grounded as a result of that. Alright, it's back together. I think I've been able to take care of most of the hum I was getting. There's still a little bit of buzz through the pedals and stuff, which is probably kind of normal, but I think it's definitely improved quite considerably. So it's producing sound. I'm going to make a designated video just to do a proper demo of everything. But it all came together. It's just a lot of hours troubleshooting and reworking all this. But so far, I think I'm pretty happy with it. I'm just trying to get acclimated with it, and I haven't put the pick guard back on because I want to fine-tune the pickup heights and that kind of stuff. But anyway, thanks for watching. Bye for now. Stay tuned for a proper demo and review.